All right, folks, good afternoon once again. This is the second segment of the Marketplace Reset Show here on WSTX 970 AM and the Kalulu Network. I'm Anthony Weeks, executive producer, and I'm joined by my other colleagues in the second segment. This is business, economy, and public policy. We're taking a deep dive on business, economy, and public policy that affects not only us here in the United States, but certainly affect us throughout the Caribbean and the Caribbean diaspora, and of course the wider infrastructure of government and how government affect us as a people. So I want to say good afternoon to Dr. Karen Green on the program. She says not to call her that, but for the purpose of formality, I got to introduce her. Then I'll just switch into Karen after a while, and not Dr. Karen. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm great. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. Happy Wellness Wednesday. We just had a great show with our colleagues in the Washington, Maryland, D.C. area. We had a cameo appearance, return visit by the wellologist Candace Camille she's the CEO of Candace Enterprise. Great conversation. How you doing?
I'm good. You know what? It's a whole new week. It seems like only yesterday we were here, but I trust we're going to have a great discussion today, continuing on where we left off last week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that, I'm excited because you can't help get excited when there's always a fresh start, new beginning, right? And, when you have a new administration coming in, and it just seems like, I like the energy. I like the energy that's coming out of Washington that, we can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Yeah.
We can address those issues that need to be addressed, that are absolutely critical and paramount, and at the same time run government. They're not exclusive to each other. The fact is, we have some really Herculean tasks of challenges that we have to overcome, and so clearly, as a country, we need to get busy because we are really in a pickle because we have so many different crises on so many different fronts that we have to tackle. And certainly what we're doing on this program is to bring the third border, the Caribbean region, to the forefront. Because why? Because no longer are we going to stand on the sideline and just hear the conversation dictated by others who were supposed to lead but are not leading. But we're going to have the conversation on this program as to what has to happen, not just policy wise, but implementation and enforcement of those things. We have a lot of great laws, great policies, but if we're not enforcing them, if we're not implementing them, if we're not throwing the resource behind them, how do we fix anything? How does it really matter? So I'm really glad that you and Terry are two very powerful, dynamic women in the public policy space. You guys are kick-ass type women. And so I like the fact that I'm just holding on, to you guys. So I really enjoy the fact that we're working together. So what do we have today? Talk to me. What are we going to be talking about today? I know it's a continuation of the U.S. strategy engagement in the Caribbean. We are still on the issue of security in the region, and immigration I think that's where we left off. Yeah. Who do we have today?
So we actually are going to tap into that piece. Mm-hmm. We have attorney Diane Claxton Rodriguez, who is a dear friend of mine. I go by Diane Claxton, so I'm adding her a hyphenated name to it today. The reality is that immigration, we've seen the changes this week, and you rightfully said it. We now have, and I have to be at this point very correct with this, is that we have a president that's doing the work right now while there is even impeachment going on and he's not being distracted. Right. Moving on to secure the issues of, for one, the pandemic and social and economic issues, that he has in fact recanted and retracted some of these immigration laws that have affected us, so many of us in the Caribbean region. So we invited Diane to come join us this afternoon because she's an attorney practicing law in the state of Florida as well as in New York. And she's one who has literally been on the front line protecting borders and caring for folks who've been basically left out, restricted, or excluded from this process. So I'm happy Diane is a little sister. Hi, Diane. Blessings be with you.
Hi. Nice to meet you all.
Another New Yorker, Terry.
Hi, Diane. Welcome.
Hi. Nice to meet you. So, how are you guys doing today?
We're good.
Trying to stay warm, Diane.
Yeah,
Okay,
Florida's warm.
So let's do a roll call statewide. Okay, Karen, where are you?
So I'm in Florida, biasly, the new Donald Trump dump spot where we have to fix the world from here. I know I hate to say it. I know we have a nonpartisan program, but we're dealing with serious issues here in the state of Florida, and this is where we are.
Yeah.
Lots going on. We're gonna have to pick it up from here. But we're now hosting the 45th president in our state, and we're dealing with a whole lot of other issues.
Yeah.
You heard yesterday that there was a foreign, basically, or water in the Tampa area was basically somehow contaminated, poisoned, and that's like less than an hour drive from me during the Super Bowl Sunday. So we have a lot going on, not just our social media, but as we talked about security, this is major for all of us here. Yeah. So welcome, Diane. I'm so happy you're here to join us.
Hello.
And before, real quickly, Terry, I know that you guys have been experiencing a nor'easter. Has anything changed? Is that still the current situation there?
Well, there's no snow today. And so it's still pretty cold though. 24 degrees, it's still cold. But there's no snow. So we're still battling the parking situation. But the good thing about it is that Friday, the restaurants will open up 25%. So that's a real good thing. Valentine's Day, as you know, is on Sunday. And so the restaurants are looking forward to having some indoor dining and to have that space so that they can actually have people come in and patronize. So we're looking forward to some of that funding this weekend. So we're looking forward to that.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Attorney Claxton, where are you coming in from?
I'm from, I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, but I'm coming in from Kissimmee, Florida. I moved down here a few years back. So I do have my license as an attorney in New York, and I have my license in Florida.
Okay, awesome.
I know you're not missing that nor'easter.
No, this is exactly the kind of stuff that made me want to move.
Welcome to the program. I'm going to let you guys have some conversation. I'm going to go back studio for a little bit, but last week, just to recap, we talked about the issue of security, the security issue between the relationship between the United States and the Caribbean region. While it talked about the issue of issues like crime and whether it's some issues of terrorism and drugs that are really infiltrating the region, a lot of what is perpetrated, or at least perceived to be perpetrated, or at least try to be blamed on, is immigrants are part of that problem. The reason why we need to close our borders is because immigrants are the ones that are really perpetuating this problem. And we need to be able to really talk about this issue with a great deal of honesty. You know, we're a country that was built based on immigrants. And for us to be able to stick our nose up on new immigrants coming into this country, especially DACA, you know, kids that were born in this country, and now because of whatever legal status, immigration status, we now see that they now say that's a security issue, and therefore we need to be able to send them back. That is insane. That is totally insane and unacceptable.
So, Anthony, one of the reasons I thought Diane was a good guest for us is because she represents not only one island in the Caribbean, she's multilingual. She is a second generation from Haiti. And as well as she is literally married into a family. Her children are actually from another country that has had immigration restraints in Ecuador, is it?
Yeah, Ecuador.
And so now I thought not only that, but she had been on the front line protecting and securing the borders of children and other people who've been expelled for these reasons. This week, for example, Terry, I know you and I have seen the news. There is another unrest in the island of Haiti.
Yeah,
which is really the Republic of Haiti, in my opinion. And so we have other issues. We have issues of one of the things I saw this week in the news, Dan, before you introduce yourself, is the Caribbean has other challenges, not just what we know to be trafficking, but the Jones Act also creates some interesting dynamics for commute and servicing. And during the pandemic, we had there were people who the marine industry really suffered, because at one point there were yachts that were stranded in the Caribbean, not knowing where to go, and or Caribbean. There were employees, thousands of which were literally on these yachts and vessels in our region. Yes. So today I wanted to invite you here. I know you are not just an attorney by your profession, but I know how sensitive you are and how caring you are to our constituents in the Caribbean. And so we welcome you. Terry and I welcome you here this afternoon. So tell us a little about yourself, not only the law you practice, but your role right now in the changes you see with this administration.
Yes. Well, mainly I've been working in immigration, and the last administration, the last few months was horrible. They were just trying to get as many people out from, they were denying everything. Every motion that you filed, every case was getting denied. And the new administration is kind of like a breath of fresh air. They're really trying to work hard to kind of encourage immigrants. And they're saying that Biden is going to pass a bill, but he might do it piecemeal just because there might still be opposition. But one of the first things that he did was reinstitute the DACA program, because as you know, during the Trump administration, they tried to get rid of it. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court actually said that the Trump administration, the way they went about it procedurally was wrong. So they reinstated DACA. But he had put all of these things, for example, with DACA, it's kind of like a work permit that you have every 2 years, you can renew it. He had reduced it to 1 year, like a regular work permit. He was not accepting any new initial DACA applications. So if you had DACA under Obama, you were able to renew the DACA, but you were not able to apply for DACA as a new applicant. So even if you had met all of the requirements, you were here since 2007, you entered as a child, you brought in with your parents, and you've been here consistently, even if you had evidence that you never left the country, all of that he was not accepting. So that was one of the first things that the Biden administration basically eliminated and reinstated DACA. One of the great things also was the Trump administration was just had tried to get rid of every kind of immigrant. Even if you had never committed a crime, you had family members here, you had children born here. And that's something that Biden tried to eliminate when he passed that first 100 days, basically moratorium on deportation, in order to give a chance to stop and allow DHS to reevaluate the cases. Now, there was a judge in Texas that did an injunction. Basically, he put an injunction on that moratorium. So there have still been people within ICE trying to deport people. But the way it was under Obama, if you had an order of deportation or you were illegal, but you had no criminal background, you had children here, and you were basically carrying yourself as a responsible person, you wouldn't automatically get deported. But you still had to check in with ICE maybe once a year, twice a year, to make sure that you were complying. And Trump eliminated that. It didn't matter. All these people were getting deported and families were being torn apart. So that's one of the things that Cuccinelli, who was the head of the, within the immigration task force, basically gave the union inside of ICE power to say that they were still going to deport people if they found that the person had any violence or any kind of criminal situation. So I have a client who, for example, he's been here for almost 20 years. He has a wife and 2 kids. The wife is pregnant. And he had some kind of, he had gotten stopped for driving without a license. And that was the first time that he had a criminal offense. The police officer put driving without a license without violence and another charge for driving without a license, for resisting arrest with violence, and another charge for without violence. What? So because of that little with violence, they're allowed to put several charges on one incident. So because he put that little, with violence, he went to ICE and they were like, it's fine. The officer that was supposed to attend to him that day wasn't there. So on the 20th, he had to go to his probation officer at the criminal court, and they had released him and everything. And he went to check in as normal. When he got there on the 20th in the morning at 9 a.m., the day of the inauguration, ICE officers were there and they took him away, and he's still in Chrome right now.
What?
So we're trying to get him out because technically, because the officer put with violence, that he resisted arrest, but he also put without violence, which is kind of, contrary.
Right, it's a conflict, right?
Yeah, so I couldn't understand that. I consulted a criminal attorney, and she said, yes, they are able to put several charges. So that's why they have
conflicting charges. They're able to put several conflicting charges on the same.
It doesn't, but it's Florida.
Right. So Terry, that's the part that Terry and I can actually we want to discuss, because immigration for us, it's not just the fact that we're protecting the borders, but it's also an economic piece.
Right.
That many people are actually working to sustain and provide for their families.
That's right.
And kind of restriction. For example, one of the primary things we have here in the state of Florida and other states is the restrictions for driving without being properly with documentation. So there's some states that have actually allowed drivers to be to basically have drivers driving permits.
Right.
We think that we're moving forward to eliminate that kind of influence.
Right.
Yes.
I think we wanted to also discuss with you, for example, we our brother Anthony spoke of DAPA and DACA, and seeing the progression of this Biden, Caribbean partnership for prosperity with us. Now we also have another situation where in the Caribbean, channeling through Venezuela, another flood of immigrants. And Anthony and I have had discussions recently with even Guyana being now included in this piece of.
That's right. That's right.
So I'll ask one more question before I open it up to the other folks, Diane. Venezuela was granted, one of the first things that Joe Biden did in his administration was to extend TPS to Venezuelans. And there is a mass group of Venezuelans who typically came to the borders of Florida because it's the third border.
Yeah.
How is this when compared to, for example, your generational home of Haiti? Because somehow Haiti was not included in that.
Yes, right. How does that work?
So can you speak on that for us? Because Haiti did not get added to this new TPS extension. Venezuela did. And for example, your family homeland of Ecuador, Mexico, etc. Can you just put it all together for us? What this TPS looks like in this administration?
Well, actually, there's two things going on, because Trump I think it was on the 19th or the 20th, the day that he left, he signed an executive order called deferred enforcement. So basically, it's like a DED where any Venezuelan that was present in the United States before January 20th, they're actually able to defer the enforcement of their deportation or the enforcement of any kind of immigration action against them for 18 months. And I don't know why he kind of did this, because the whole time that the Trump administration was there, he did nothing for the Venezuelans. And on the contrary, in the beginning, when I first started working in immigration a few years back, basically, even if you had a deportation, if you were Venezuelan, you would not get deported because there was no treaty with the United States and Venezuela to allow them to deport you. So you could still remain here with a suspension of deportation or a stay of removal, and you would be able to stay here. And the last few months, he was deporting Venezuelans. There was a boat that went to Venezuela with a bunch of Venezuelans who had orders of deportation. So I don't know what deal he made. Maybe some rich Venezuelans gave him some money last minute, but he did that DED. And basically, it doesn't grant you as much as TPS. All it really is a deferred enforcement for 18 months. Now, what Joe Biden's trying to do is the TPS, which is much more powerful, because TPS can be renewed. And, like we have people from Central America, from El Salvador and Nicaragua that had TPS in the early 2000s, and they're still living here peacefully. Right. But what they didn't do is they didn't talk about renewing the TPS for Haitians, because the whole reason why they gave Haitians the TPS was because of the earthquake that happened in Haiti.
That's right.
So since that's been around, 10 years, or I think it was 2010. So it's been over 10 years. Supposedly the danger is gone. But I'm seeing a lot of Haitians even crossing the border because they have a lot of political problems right now going on in Haiti.
Exactly.
So I have some Haitian clients that flew from Haiti to Chile and because for some reason there were flights from Haiti to Chile, and there's a group of Haitians living over there, but they said that they experienced a lot of racism in Chile and that they weren't able to find jobs. So they actually flew to Mexico and tried to cross the border. So there is a lot of political uprising going on right now in Haiti, but I don't know if that's going to qualify or rise to the level where they're going to give them TPS, unfortunately. So
I have just as a point of reference, when you say TPS, for the point for the edification of our audience, what is TPS?
TPS is temporary protected status. So basically, you're temporarily protected from any form of deportation, even if you have an order of deportation, if the government grants your country temporary protected status, then they can't deport you. For example, one of the things that Biden did is for Liberians. Liberians had deferred enforcement for deportations for the last 10 years. And that had run out because there was a time limit on it. And Biden immediately came in and he reinstated that. So now people from Liberia are able to continue to remain in the United States because of that. But when you have anything that's like deferred action or temporary protected status, it doesn't really grant you permanent status in the United States, but it basically grants you a work permit where you're able to pay taxes, you can work, you can buy a house, you can live peacefully, but you still are not, there's no path to citizenship unless you marry a U.S. citizen or find another way to have a path to citizenship. So
Karen and Terry, with this new administration, do you think this time around immigration reform is going to be a bipartisan effort, or is it going to be partisan?
I hope it's going to be. I hope it's going to be bipartisan. I think that now, especially seeing that what's going on with the impeachment trial, which was really interesting. I mean, yesterday for me was a pivotal moment. You guys, I don't know about you guys. Yesterday for me was a pivotal moment. I saw for the first time that there was an opportunity for both sides to really come together in a collective way. So I believe that it will be bipartisan, and I think a lot of things are going to be bipartisan. And I'm hoping, especially immigration, with the economic disparities and racial disparities, and I'm hoping the healthcare disparities. I'm hoping all of those things are going to be on a bipartisan level. And so, and immigration is one of those things. I really hope so. From yesterday's display, if yesterday was an indication of what this new administration is going to be about, I think it's been for a new day. I really.
Yeah.
Karen, don't you believe, and of course, Attorney Claxton, you can also comment on this because you're practicing every day. But don't you think our security issue would be better enhanced if we were more pro-immigrants in terms of not only for our backyard, the third border, which is the Caribbean, Central America, South America, but the fact that if you're anti-immigration, doesn't that then increase the chance of higher security issues coming in, facing the country? And so therefore, isn't it in our best interest to have a more pro-immigration policy and not an executive order? Because I believe, Attorney, you said it was an executive order. An executive order is only as good as the administration in power. It's not a power that said it's not law. So obviously we need immigration reform that is law, that basically that's the law of the land. So what do you say in terms of, if we have the kind of immigration reform, and it's pro-immigration, don't you think our security issue would be better enhanced?
I totally agree with you, Anthony. I also want to just elaborate on what Terry said. I too agree, Terry, that this is going to be a bipartisan approach, because the effects we had that are contrary to that was devastating. Yeah. In the countries that were literally blacklisted and or degraded, with all honesty, just horribly named. These are the countries that were literally blacklisted.
That's right.
And one of the things, as Diane just said, is that here is a retraction to even our African country.
That's right.
I totally agree with you, Anthony. I believe that the freedom of immigration creates more of, there's an economic value to it. There is, which is the primary piece for you, Terry, is that the idea of only the wealthy who can afford to come to America will be able to enhance our economy is ridiculous. Yes. I think one of the things we now know is that, for example, even this pandemic, most of the scientists that were innovative in developing these vaccines were from the African continent. And so the idea that we were eliminating or restricting this kind of science and innovation from India and from Pacific, you name it, I really believe, and I could see this. You all know that I was a part of the DACA initiative for Organized for America, the pathway to citizenship. Remember that this president, the 46th president, was literally a part of that process with President Barack Obama in that process, the pathway to citizenship. So I'm not saying that, I mean, I would hope to say there was an amnesty initiative, but I think the pathway to citizenship would be more receptive, the Republicans would be more receptive to a process of legalizing immigration. And I think, Anthony, I think there are a few things, as you always say, money talks. I think once we can identify the resources, particularly in the Caribbean basin, of alternative energy, or economic development, wind energy, issues of employment, service industries, innovation. I think once we can bring those things to the table, Diane, one of the things this group of us here is actually preparing to do is to identify leaders across the Caribbean to put together a document of recommendations. And we too have decided to pull our own 100 days to create that document of recommendations for each of the initiatives that are discussed in that document that you've seen, security, economy, social issues, whatever it is, to make that document collaborative. And I think that from this conversation, the suggestion of education, social and economic things, security from our borders, and even the Jones Act, which the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico basically, and the territories in the Pacific, I think we're going to have a great opportunity to collaborate and help this administration to advance the things for all immigrants across the globe.
We're going to need to take, we're on the top of the hour, ladies. We need to break away for.
Wow, already?
Oh, yeah. Oh, God.
Wow, it goes by so fast.
I thought we had, okay, we have a commercial.
Yeah, we have some serious issues that we have to tackle, right?
Yeah.
And clearly, when we think of immigration issues, when you think of the offshore, territories of the United States, right? They're the contiguous in the United States, the U.S. mainland, where the states all connected. But then when you start looking at the U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Northern Mariana, places like, what's the other one? I'm having American Samoa. These are outskirts of the country, and we act as an outskirt. We have special things that we bring to the table because we're not part of the U.S. mainland. And like you said, issues like Jones Act, where the Virgin Islands, I think Puerto Rico had gotten temporary exemption from the Jones Act because of the Hurricane Irma and Maria, but it's not permanent. The only territory in the country that is exempt from the Jones Act is the U.S. Virgin Islands. And there's some advantage to that, and I think we need to really start to really flex our muscles and really leverage that, because there's a lot of power in it, and we don't. And the Virgin Islands need to really come to the table and understand the role that it plays. But when we come back, we'll tackle this issue. This is the Marketplace Reset Show. This is the business, economy, and public policy segment number 2. We'll be right back.
Small business is a part of all of us each and every day. It's where we eat, it's where we shop, it's where we go to meet our friends and colleagues. In the wake of COVID-19, our small business community desperately needs our help. We must do our part to help our local communities to once again thrive. We must focus our attention on the small businesses that are the fabric of our great nation. SureUp is a network of small business owners, their employees, and local consumers all working in unison to support each other. By creating incentives for consumers to think local before considering regional and national providers to fulfill their needs, we create local job opportunities and rebuild our communities. In addition, through AI-driven tools and machine learning, in just 5 minutes a day, ShareUp assists business owners in improving their social media presence, which enhances their visibility among consumers and levels the playing field so that local businesses can better compete with large, name-brand online competitors. When local businesses leverage the ShareUp platform, full-time and part-time employees, whether W-2 or 1099, are rewarded with a variety of voluntary perks and member benefit options. These include discounts on the things people do every day, access to low-cost, subscription-based telehealth and teletherapy, discounted prescription drug plans, connection to exclusive Prosper resources, and so much more. All for less than the cost of a cup of coffee each day. The Jumpstart Marketplace is here to support the health and wellness of individual employees, as well as the health of businesses in the local communities in which we live and work. We're all in this together, so join us as we reinvigorate our local community and improve the physical and financial health of working America.
We're back, and you're tuned into the Marketplace Reset Show and Jumpstart TV. Please join us at www.jumpstarteconomy.us. Again, that's www.jumpstarteconomy.us. And you're able to listen or watch the show live. But if for any reason you didn't catch the live show, the show is automatically rebroadcast right after we are done with the live streaming of the show. And this is the Marketplace Reset Show, segment number 2 on business, economy, and public policy, with my colleagues Terry Coaxum and Dr. Karen Green, who are certainly no strangers and experts in the space of not only public policy, but understanding the business dynamics and community as well. Ladies, thank you so much for your contribution today and conversation. We have a special guest today. We have Attorney Claxton with us today, and Diane Claxton is an attorney that is, she's not only just a general practitioner, but she specialized in immigration as well, and having a great conversation with her. Let's bring her back in on the program. Welcome back, Counselor.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so the going into the break, we were really focusing heavily on what we believe are some of the things that we need to do, or policy-wise. There was emphasis on the Jones Act, but clearly, I'm a strong advocate. If we strengthen economic ties, socioeconomic ties, geopolitical ties, and cultural ties, I think we stand to be a better nation, but a better co-neighbor with each other. And only through the efforts of building strength and building stronger trade and economic ties is how we create prosperity between the United States and the region. But when I see policies that basically are targeting, when they talk about immigration policy, and it's really an immigration policy that it's anti-people of color, and you're really kind of picking winners and losers as to who should be defined as immigrant. Right. And the tapestry of what this country is, I don't remember the exact inscription on the Statue of Liberty, but it says something about give me your tired, your poor,
That's
and these are the immigrants that built this great country.
That's right.
And so we need to really go back to the founding of this country in terms of accepting everyone to this country and being vigilant as to how we welcome folks and how we're processing who comes in, who wants to be part of this country. And immigration reform is, I will venture to say that if we become a more diverse country, that the issue of immigration will make us a stronger and better country. What do you say, ladies?
And I say it has already done that. Anthony, I think about New York being, a salad bowl with a little bit of everyone here, right? And I think about the technology. I think about the healthcare space and all the technology. I think about working at the Small Business Administration and having, the yogurt company, the Greek yogurt company that was an immigrant, and being able to bring that new technology, that new space, that new product to market. I think about all of the different technologies that came along that were immigrants and that did some wonderful, wonderful things. And so, we are a space of immigrants, whether that is building bridges here, whether that's building new buildings, whether that is in the space of our products as far as our TVs and our phones or whatever that is. We are still a nation of immigrants. And like you said, we're talking economically. So we are in this space, the marketplace, where we're talking about restarting our economy, and immigrants are very much a part of that. And like, Karen and I said before, having that conversation in this first 100 days, making sure that this new administration understands the importance of immigrants, making sure both sides of the aisle understand the importance of immigrants. And I dare say we all come from immigrants. If we look at all of our genealogies, if we look at all of our background, we're coming from immigrants in some space. And so we have to be very vigilant. We have to be very understanding and very tolerant in that space, making sure that everyone is inclusive and included economically in that space. And so, we are immigrants. We are our brothers' keepers. We are our sisters' keepers right now, right here. And so we need to really continue to talk about it, continue to be about our brothers and our sisters' business.
Thank you, Terry, for saying that. I think one of the most important description of the diversity we have in this country is our military.
Oh, yes.
And if you look at the diversity of our people protecting our great nation,
that's right.
Right now in the Capitol, we have National Guards protecting our Constitution or democracy.
That's
and
right.
When you look at the wars we've had over the centuries, over the last 2 decades, the last centuries, the 20th century and before, we have all had our Black and brown brothers in World War I, World War II.
That's right.
The Caribbean, on ships, you name it. And right now, the last 2 Gulf Wars, the reality is that Black and brown people, every denomination, ethnicity, we're all fighting to protect this great country.
That's right.
And so I think ultimately, we all know too that folks who go to the military has actually created that kind of safe haven. And I know Dan can attest to this, that there was a time when the GI Bill and people going to the military was an advanced way for people to become naturalized or to become citizens by contributing in the military. And so I am hopeful in the world we're in right now that bipartisan appreciation and acknowledgement that this country has not only, as Anthony rightfully said, we've evolved. We're here. There's so many immigrants now in the country that make up the electorate.
That's right.
When we get past the census, we're going to see, regardless of what party you're on, you're going to see that America now reflects the diversity that happened when this great country was founded.
That's right.
I include you on this discussion because I know where you stand on this. So please enlighten us too as to what your thoughts are, where we are with this diversity.
Yes.
Well, exactly what you're saying about the military. That used to be basically a path to citizenship.
What?
And now they have something called parole in place, which was really started by President Obama. because there was a soldier under the Obama era that was in Iraq, and he basically died. And he was married to someone who was not a U.S. citizen. And as soon as he died, I think he was in the process of applying for her and trying to fix her status. The basically Department of Homeland Security deported her.
Wow.
So because of that, they created something called parole in place, which allows you to remain in the United States if you are the immediate relative of someone who's in the military. Usually it would be parents or spouse. Mm-hmm. It doesn't extend to sisters and brothers, but if you're the parent or a spouse of someone who's in the military, even if as soon as that person enters the military, you can apply for this parole in place, and it lasts for a whole year. Mm-hmm. During that year, you can actually apply to adjust your status and get your green card. So we have a lot of kids that they'll enter at 18 and they can't apply for their parents until they turn 21. Mm-hmm. So every year they can apply for this parole in place until they turn 21. And then when they're turn 21, they apply for their parents to become legal permanent residents and eventually US citizens. So that's really rare because if it's not through that path, normally, if you marry someone who is a US citizen and you entered illegally, let's say you came through the border, you have to request a waiver. And when they give you that waiver, it used to be, this is something that changed, I think it was 2001. So it used to be before 2001, you married a US citizen, you came here illegally, they would make you pay some kind of a fee, kind of a penalty, and you could still have your adjustment of status interview inside the United States. Mm-hmm. After 2001, there was a big immigration act that said no more. So basically, even if you're married to a US citizen, you cannot adjust status in the United States. You have to go back to your country and go through the consulate, the American consulate, and have your adjustment of status interview at the American consulate. The problem is when you get outside of the country, they can decide to punish you, and you can put that 10-year bar on you for entering illegally. Wow. So what we usually do is we would apply for a waiver while the person is still inside of the United States. So basically the wife would do, say, a family petition. Family petition gets approved. They cannot do their adjustment of status interview. They have to leave the country to go to the consulate. So before they leave, we have to apply for this waiver. And the waiver is not for the immigrant. The waiver is actually more for the US citizen. We have to prove that this US citizen is going to suffer without their spouse. Maybe the husband pays most of the bills in the house, or at least half of the bills. We have to submit so much evidence. We actually have to show extreme hardship to the US citizen. Wow. Either she has medical issues or psychological issues. We usually will send her to get a psychological evaluation. And we have to prove and jump this high hurdle in order for them to approve this waiver. And once the waiver gets approved, then they're able to leave and go to the American consulate and present their waiver, and then they won't give them that punishment. So these are all these hoops and, just hurdles that we have to jump through, even when the person has been here quietly, doesn't have any crime, they're married to a US citizen, they have children. So I'm hoping that's something, because I heard that's one of the things that the Biden administration wants to look at, maybe making it a little bit easier to not have to go through this waiver process, or maybe not have to leave the United States. So that's something that hopefully, but the parole in place is still in place, but it doesn't, DACA students cannot join the military anymore. That at some point that changed. Yeah. What? Because I have students. Yeah. I didn't know that. Because I have students.
That's something I wasn't aware of either.
Yeah. They cannot join. You have to be either an LPR, legal permanent resident, or a US citizen to join the military. So they kind of cut off that path to citizenship for all of these kids that maybe they grew up here, they came here as a baby, they have DACA, and then they want to join the military, but they're not even allowed to join the military because they said, no, if you're not a US citizen or at least a legal permanent resident, you can't join the military. The only thing is if you have a relative, a spouse or a child who's in the military, that person can apply for you. But you as a DACA person, you can't say, well, I'm going to join the military and this is going to help me fix my status anymore.
So now when you look at the U.S. strategy for engagement in the Caribbean, mm-hmm. and it talks about the number of students from the Caribbean studying in the U.S., which is back then when the bill was passed, it was 11,042 Caribbean students studying in the United States.
Wow.
What role does education play? I see you guys talking about the military, but a lot of Asian immigrants take advantage of the education route to come into the country. They attend these Ivy League schools, and a lot of times they choose to stay in the United States instead of going back right away. They create these startups, these innovative, advanced technology companies. Where does the Caribbean stand in terms of strategically using education as an entry point as opposed to anything else? I know you guys are talking about the military, but also when you think of the eastern corridor of the country, from the northeast all the way down to the southeast of the country, where is the concentrated entry point for folks coming in from the Caribbean wanting to come into the country? Is it Florida? Is it the Carolinas? Is it the New York tri-state area? I know that there's a large, the biggest concentration of Caribbean people are in the New York tri-state area, from my understanding. Was it 2.5 million? But where does Florida and other states on the East Coast play for Caribbean people if they're choosing to want to come to the country? How do they decide? Do they go to the New York tri-state area? Do they go to Georgia, Carolinas, or do they go to Florida? Which is the better entry point?
I think New York.
You can go ahead.
I think New York, and I think it's because there's so many different ways you can come into New York. There's so many different areas that you can come into New York, and I think New York has been proven to be one of the entry points because of that reason. There's so many ways that you can come into New York, and that's why it was so hard for us to kind of cut ourselves off when the pandemic happened, because there's so many different entry and access points to New York, and that has been one of the reasons. And so there's a lot of brain drain, right? There's a lot of people coming from the Caribbean into New York, and once they're into New York, you make it here, you make it anywhere, and then they're off to the different spaces. But that's one of the things that I think we will have to revisit this, right? This whole brain drain thing, because what I want to see happen is, yes, you come here to the United States and to the mainland and you get this education, but I want to see you take that technology and that education back to the Caribbean, back to the continent, back to these different spaces, and put that there so that we are also thriving and growing into the resources into those spaces. And so that's something that we talked about when I was at SBA, but that's something that I want to revisit at another time. And so I'll let you ladies talk about where you think that concentration of individuals are coming to, but I see and I've witnessed it coming into New York and to the tri-state area.
So Anthony's question was really of multiple questions, and to respond, I think we touched on students first. I think that there has been over the last 2 decades an interest for recruiting nurses and teachers from the Caribbean into the United States. Those two fields were really, there was attraction for students for those two recruitments. Also for Canada, these were two occupations that were always allowing folks to come in. And then of course there was a tourist sector that would literally bring in for tourism. Folks would come in for that industry training they would come into this. Florida would be one of the first states for schools as it relates to tourism and hospitality is one of the areas here. For an African American wanting to attend a Black school, folks would typically want to go into Georgia, to North Carolina. I've seen that transition as well. And then of course there is a large population of Black people, which we are, in Texas. And so it's not just the East Coast. It really is, we demographically almost want to colonize to grow ourselves and to become familiar with our own cultures. On that piece, Anthony, I think Florida, like it was, Terry, before New York was the hub of Caribbean people, the reality is Florida is now the third gateway, not just for the Caribbean, but for the Americas. Folks are literally coming through here. We have the worst minimum wage, but nonetheless, it's the entrepreneurial spirit of not having to deal with the winter, but coming in for the multiple college opportunities and coming to a familiar community is basically what's happening here. So that would be my take, Anthony. I think
Wanga Custer just shared, and you can see it on the television screen, Juan Acosta from Facebook said that's a thing of the past. There are other entry points now in the U.S. And then he also posted it with a follow-up. He also posted that he said there is Miami, Atlanta, Charlotte, Texas, and now Chicago.
Well,
so you have multiple entry point.
That's
But
right.
one of the reasons I asked is because, I have my kids are in Miami. I spent a lot of time. We lived in New York, but we spent a lot of time in Miami. And there are two dominant groups from the Caribbean in Florida: the
Yeah.
Cubans
Yeah.
and the Haitians. Right?
Right.
You have others, and so I'm just wondering, what would make one inclined to choose one state over the other? What is that thing that, if you're trying to make a decision, where do you want to go? If you're coming from the Caribbean as an immigrant, where's your better point of entry or your better chance of success coming into the country?
I think California is also, a popular place now too, though, because I see a lot of Caribbean when I talk to my students, and they really want to break into the entertainment world, or they're looking to go into, any of the fields. If they're looking to do anything in TV and radio, they're looking to go to California. California is one of those spaces they want to play, and they believe it's a warm space for them to play in. And so I think that also California also has that attraction to the Caribbean, students that are coming in as well. So
I think.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I think what you said earlier about surviving in New York, if you can be there, you make it, you do it. That's what has been the attraction to New York City. You can get lost in New York.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why so many people have gone to New York. But to support Juan's comment, he's perfectly right. It all depends on where you feel you're most likely to be invisible. And to have, and that's basically because if you're not speaking Creole and you're not speaking Spanish and you're coming from the Caribbean, you really want to be almost colonizing a community that you would just be Black and invisible. And I think that's basically what?
Counselor, when you give legal advice, do you get asked this kind of question? Should I be in Florida? Should I be in Georgia, Carolina? Should I be in New York? Do you get those kind of questions?
Well, the thing is, when you talked about the students, I remember in the very beginning, you talked about the Asian students, right? So a lot of times these Asian students are coming here on what we call an F1 visa, which is a student visa. So the student visa, the problem with that is that you are not allowed to get financial aid. So it causes a situation of classism, because basically it's only really families that have money that are able to afford to send their kids, even from the Caribbean. Because I do know some Haitians that send their kids to come and study. And one of the reasons why they do prefer Florida is because the colleges are cheaper in Florida. The state colleges are much cheaper than the state colleges in New York and some of the northern places. So a lot of the Caribbean and Spanish-speaking countries like to come here, just because if you're coming on a student visa, you're not going to be able to get that financial aid. You're not going to get those student loans and grants and everything. You either will have to, your family will have to pay, but usually, unless you're a legal permanent resident, it's very hard to get financial aid. So I think that's one of the reasons why Florida is very appealing, because we don't have really expensive. We do have expensive private schools, but there's a lot of public schools, like, UCF in Central Florida, where I'm at, University of Central Florida, Florida State, University of Florida. Most of the schools that you hear about, those big colleges, are actually state colleges. So that's a big,
a big push
to students.
And I only stated that because obviously this program is broadcast on Tempo Network Television throughout the Caribbean region, parts of South America, in Guyana, in Suriname. And so if people are looking at, they're saying a sort of a renewal of hope for relationship between the Caribbean and America because of the new administration, and they're contemplating this. I want to kind of give some guidance, if you will, as they're trying to contemplate this. I see my classmate is calling me out. He's telling me, yes, California too. Thanks, Juan, for calling me out like that, man. Yeah, California, definitely California. All right, thanks, man.
Yeah. So Anthony, I want to elaborate on that piece that Diane just did. I actually supported and helped fight for that in-state tuition for undocumented folks in the state of Florida to have the same in-state tuition cost. So the state of Florida does appeal to people to be able to afford the same cost of paying the same amount of tuition for undocumented and or for immigrants in the state of Florida. So if it means we're pitching to come to Florida, that's a great place. You come help us build it. And to go back to Terry's piece, you're right. I believe there should be something, there's, Israel does it. You go to school, you have to contribute to the social economic community and in a civic way and or military. So I think we're going to have to come to that piece where there's a contribution of some kind of exchange that we probably need to look at going forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unfortunately, we have what is it, maybe like 1 minute.
How did this happen?
Counselor, give out your information on how folks can get in touch with you. Obviously, you are a legal advisor. Give folks information how they can reach you, please.
So the law firm is called JAL Law, and the .com. You can check it out. It's the head attorney is Juan Antonio Lozada. But if you check out JAL Law in Texas and Florida, we actually have the main office in Texas, and we're opening a second office here in Orlando, Florida. So you might come up on the website that says Texas, but we're definitely here in Florida too. So JAL Law. Okay, Juan Antonio Lozada.
All right, thank you so much. Ladies, any parting words before I let you guys go?
Thank you so much for joining us, Diane. We hope to invite you back when the laws change and you can update us. And Terry, I love you. Thank you for just being there as a collaborator.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
But you don't love me? I mean, what is that?
We love you, Anthony.
Hi, ladies. We'll talk.
Bye,
Bye, guys.